Hey folks, I've been selling on Amazon since 2016, so a little over 8 years. And I like to think in that time I've picked up, a thing or two in terms of what works and what doesn't. And what I want to do is over the next couple of minutes, I just want to share with you what I feel are some of my biggest learnings. And you can take them and apply them to your own business and sometimes avoid the mistakes that I made. Now, I'm going to start in no particular order, right? The very first thing I want to talk to you about is when you launch a new product, that it doesn't necessarily always sell straight out the gate. I've seen this more times than not, where a product, you put it live, you've done all the work, you upload the listing, and then nothing. Like literally, you put it live and nothing happens, right? And then maybe like a week later, you get a sale, and then a week after that, you get two sales, and then suddenly you get three sales. And then, you know, as things start happening that have been going on in the background, so Amazon have been ranking your product. You've perhaps been getting some reviews, you've put products away for Vine, and you've optimized your PPC. As you start doing all these things, and they all start happening at once, your product starts getting sales, and then suddenly you're doing two, three, four, five a day, right? But at the very beginning, you were panicking because you were like, nothing's happening. I need you to stop and just realize sometimes it just doesn't sell straight out the gate. It can, but not always. Just remember that, right? When you launch your product. I also recommend, it's to do with launching, better start with a high price than a low price. And let me tell you a story. Recently, I launched a product that we had intended selling at 24.99, right? Now, for some reason, the listing was at 34.99 and the product went live. And lo and behold, within 2 days, we actually made three sales at 34.99. Now, this product, the images, nothing was finished. It just was the listing set up and an image or two. That was it, right? And we'd made three sales. So that straight away told me that our pricing at 24.99 likely was too low. Okay. So where we're at the moment is we're actually at 29.99. We've lowered it a little bit. Yesterday, for example, we made seven sales or six sales, right? Um, it seems to be going well, and it's just starting to bed in. The BSR is decreasing and the product is getting more and more sales. So maybe if we had started at our initial price of 24.99, we would have been losing out on nearly £5 profit per sale. So my advice to you is this: start at the higher price. You can always lower it. And the reality is the Amazon algorithm, when it sees you decreasing the price after a period of 30 days, say at a high price to a low price, it actually promotes your products. It's like, oh, there's a bit of a sale going on here. So you can get benefits that way. And I find it's much easier to go down in a big jump, sorry, than it is to go up. So start high and move down if you have to. Now, getting into suppliers, right? Suppliers always want to work with you. At least in my experience, they want to work with you for the long haul. There's a lot of talk online about, you know, getting like just really not caring about the supplier, not really thinking about, you know, um what their needs are, and um that it's very much like a one-way relationship from either side. And that is not the case. What I found from my suppliers is that they always want to provide the best product possible to me because they see that as a way of continuing the relationship and encouraging repeat orders. Now, sometimes just to do with cultural differences or misunderstandings, we need to be very specific on what we require. Like, I mean, like really detailed, because sometimes suppliers, through no fault of their own, can prep a product or make a product that just doesn't live up to our expectations. And sometimes you suggest something to a supplier and they're like, well, that's very expensive. And you're like, well, how much? And they're like, it's 10 cent extra a unit. And you're like, yeah, but that's not expensive. It saves me a pile of returns and negative reviews. Like I will make it back, tenfold in terms of extra sales and positive reviews and less headaches. And ultimately, perhaps the product being a success or not. So work with your suppliers, encourage them, um, and they will, serve you better. And together you can work for the long haul. But they do want to serve you and give you the best experience possible. It's not, I very rarely see a one-way street. It's their culture, I think. And I think that's just worth bearing in mind. And then talking on suppliers, I recommend always to pay your supplier a fair price. So one example is recently we were negotiating with a supplier and maybe we negotiated too hard and eventually they agreed to our price, but they were kind of like, there's nothing really in this for us. Now, they may or may not have been telling the truth. I don't think they were. So I just came back to them and I said, look, guys, what would you view as a fair price? FAIR. And this was for a product that was already selling. Like we were making money on this product at the price they were selling at. And they came back with a price that, whilst not as low as the price we nearly forced them into, came back with a price that was kind of a middle ground between the price they'd sold us the product at and the price that we kind of, I would like to think, I feel we forced them into. And I don't think that's a good way to do business. I'd prefer to make a little bit less money, but make sure our supplier's happy. And I find a happy supplier will go the extra mile for us and will grow with us and will ultimately, I think, just do a better job and serve us better. So I prefer a happy supplier. So that's why I think fair price. Okay. Don't always argue on price. And then also, it's worth bearing in mind, if you do argue on price and you really force that hand, um, there is a high likelihood that something will give. And I've often seen that if a supplier reduces the price, right, they're taking it out of the product more than likely. Like they're removing some material, they're making it thinner, lighter grade, thinner boxes, all these things that will ultimately cost us more if when things go wrong or like negative reviews and so forth. It's better to get the superior product. It's better to get the happy supplier. It's better to get the thicker packaging. All these things just mean that our business actually runs smoothly and we have less problems. So always get the fair price, okay? And that actually brings me on to packaging. Don't skimp on packaging, right? I don't mean like you need a colorful carton and all that. Maybe in some products you do. What I mean is, in the past, I've experienced issues with orders whereby the carton just wasn't thick enough. Like again, I probably let the supplier. I assumed the supplier was um ensuring the packaging was up to standard, and maybe they didn't know what it was going to be used for and so forth, and so the packaging wasn't, and then all the items had to be removed from Amazon. So what we've learned, and that costs us thousands, what we've learned is that, you know what, pay that little bit extra, get that thicker carton. You'll have less lost goods, less damaged goods. You will have just less problems in general. So don't neglect packaging. Make sure the packaging is up to standard. And don't think of it as just up to standard as in it's okay on the desk here. It needs to be okay to travel across the world in a container. And it needs to be okay when it goes into Amazon's warehouse and then being sent to the consumer. There's a lot of traveling this package has to go through. And often we use a customer carton, which is like the unit the customer gets, but then there's also the master carton where sometimes multiple customer units are put into for transport across the sea. And in the problem I had recently, the master carton was fine, but the customer carton, when they were removed from that master carton when it reached Amazon, just fell apart, literally fell apart. And that won't happen going forward. The supplier has addressed the issue, but I've learned since that you need to just be aware of that. And actually, one thing I haven't actually got on my list, but it actually reminds me, is that one way to avoid that is to actually have an inspection completed in China before the goods are dispatched. And that would likely show up that problem and perhaps other problems that could have happened during the manufacture. But, it's just these ideas and ways to avoid it. But in the negotiation stage, state this with the supplier. And one good test you can do is you can take your item in the customer carton and basically drop it. And if it from 2 foot height, do that 2 or 3 times. And if it survives, it's strong enough. That's an Amazon test, but I think that's what they say. The products need to be up to the ability to withstand. And that's a good test you can ask your supplier to do as well and actually just let you know how it went. Another problem, it's not really a problem, it's the sign of success, but it does turn into a problem if it keeps happening, is running out of stock. On our initial order, we should always expect to run out of stock. It's normal, it happens, right? But going forward, we really shouldn't be going out of stock too much, because we're going out of stock, we're losing ranking, we are losing sales and profit, and I don't feel the Amazon algorithm really rewards us for that. Okay, so ensure that your product remains in stock. So if we see a product and it's starting to sell well and we have a fair idea, look, this is not a seasonal product, this is going to keep selling well, we need to start thinking about that reorder before the product even stops selling that initial order. Because that is the only way to ensure we don't run out of stock. In the past, I've let products run out of stock more times than I care to admit. And it's something that I've worked on quite a lot this year just to ensure products don't run out of stock. And that ultimately helps our business. So please keep your products in stock once you know they're selling well, right? The seventh, or it's 8 point really, but seventh on my list is invest in creative. In the past, creative wasn't that important on Amazon. So you just had a product with a white background and that did the trick, right? Now it's changed a little bit. Sometimes that works fine. And I'm like, go for it. That's sufficient for this market, this product. But 9 times out of 10, you need to invest a little bit more into creative. So I would recommend, if you're not anyway good at this and you're not prepared to learn, is to invest in finding a partner, someone that can undertake this work for you, like a photography agency or an Amazon e-commerce photography agency. These people you send the product to for a fixed fee, they'll give you, the hero image, the infographics, the video, maybe all this stuff that really helps the consumer. And it conveys the product's benefits to the consumer to help them make the decision to purchase the item or not. And I like to think it helps them purchase the item. I often find that if our competing competitors' listings don't have good creative, this really helps us to stand out. And it's above the fold I would really concentrate on. Now, you can do A+ content, great, down below in the description area, but above the fold is the images, make sure they're good, and obviously the copy is good. And if you do that right, that's 90% of the battle, right? But the most important image, period, is the hero image, is the one that people see when they're browsing Amazon. You want to make sure that's really, really good. And I like to think of having my product like 80% of that image. So very little white space if we can help it, right? Amazon require a white background, but make sure that white background is the smallest size it possibly can be, right? There you go. And bright colors actually work very well there in pop. Okay. Let me see. Brand your products. Again, carrying on from the creative side of things, and it just gives us access to more ways to be creative with our products on Amazon, is to, generate and create a brand. So what I mean by brand, I mean like a trademark. Like, for example, I'm looking at a camera here, it's Canon. That's a brand, okay? And MacBook, that's a brand. You want to create your own brand that only you can sell. And that means that your product is branded under that. This is private label. I recommend you do that. I've had students in the past that have said, no, I'm just going to sell my item generic. Look, sometimes you can do that, but if you build up a generic listing that's going well, there's nothing to stop anyone else listing under that listing. Because Amazon, you don't own the listing. The product owns the listing. And if it's generic, anyone's entitled to sell it. You can't stop them. So that's my experience of it. So if it's branded, you can say, hold on, guys, I'm a brand representative here. You don't have permission to sell that product. That's counterfeit. It's not right. And Amazon will take them off, right? So you have complete control over the pricing, over the creative, over everything, copy, the whole lot. And you need that really to make proper decisions. So please invest in a brand. In the UK, for one trademark application brand and one class, it's £170. It takes about 3 months. But the second you apply for that, Amazon lets you upload your product as if it's branded. There's obviously a bit of a risk that the brand, someone could object and you'd have to withdraw your application. But, if you pick the right brand and you do your right research, you have a fair idea that that's not going to happen. But just please bear that in mind as you are creating your product. I would recommend getting it branded. Let me see. The final one, really, and I think this is probably the final one for today anyway, is this business takes time. Like, you won't get rich or have huge success day one. Like, you're going to start learning the process. You're going to start doing your product research. You're going to get good at like contacting suppliers, reviewing samples, and building this. There's a lot of things to be done here, but I think I want you to know that if you're prepared to put in the work and you're prepared to study it and just really invest in learning this model, it will work for you and it will generate additional income, perhaps replace your 9 to 5 income. Like, it can do that, but it's not going to do it in a month or two. It's going to take a couple of months, a year and a half as it happens, right? But as you keep adding products and expand to new countries, like, you'd be surprised how quickly that can compound. But I want to be real honest with you that it's not overnight. It does take time, but I think, like any business, it's going to take time. There's very few, if there's none that I know of, get rich quick schemes. Like, it's scheme even sounds wrong, even though scheme was originally just a plan. That's what it meant. But yeah, it will take time, but everything worth doing takes time. That's what I feel anyway. So guys, I hope you found these things of value, and they're just my little nuggets of wisdom in terms of Amazon. If you're interested in learning this, go up to the link in the video description or in the bio or wherever, and there's ways we can work together. Please feel free to put questions down below. I do love reading your comments, or even just if you found this value, let me know. And like the video, like the TikTok post, whatever it is, and subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.